Have you ever felt darkness seeping into every cell of your body as invisible hands grip your throat, making your heart pound in agony? Get ready, because you're about to confront entities without boundaries. Shadows come to life, whispers turn into sinister threats, and fear becomes your constant companion. Forget about sleep and peace. We're opening the doors to a world where night not only hides, but hunts your deepest fears. Turn up the volume, get comfortable, and prepare to be shaken to your core.
Rob was a native of Salem. His life was a tapestry of ordinary moments woven into the backdrop of a town steeped in history. Each morning, he would rise to the sound of the seagulls crying over the harbor. The salty air filled his lungs as he stepped outside into the cobblestone streets that had witnessed centuries of stories. His routine was simple. He worked at a local bookstore that specialized in the history of the witch trials. The shop was cozy with shelves lined with dusty tomes and the faint scent of old paper. Rob loved sharing the tales of the past with visitors. Yet, there was an undercurrent of something unsettling that crept into his daily life. The creaking floorboards seemed to whisper secrets when the shop was empty. Rob often felt as if he were being watched, a sensation that sent shivers down his spine. Rob's evenings were spent wandering the streets, lost in thought. The haunted history of Salem loomed large in his mind. He would often find himself in the burial grounds, where the gravestones leaned at odd angles, the inscriptions worn by time. He felt an inexplicable connection to those who had come before him, their lives cut short by fear and superstition. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, Rob cherished his life in Salem. He reveled in the beauty of the town, from the picturesque waterfront to the quaint shops that lined the streets. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. One evening, while he was preparing to close the bookstore, he noticed a book lying open on the floor. He was certain he had placed it back on the shelf after his last customer. The pages fluttered as if touched by an unseen hand. Rob shook his head, attributing the incident to fatigue, but the occurrences escalated. The next night, as he settled in for a quiet evening, Rob heard a faint tapping sound. He paused, listening intently. It was rhythmic and persistent, echoing from the walls of his small apartment. He rose to investigate, his heart racing. Upon inspection, he found nothing amiss. The tapping ceased, but an oppressive silence filled the air, suffocating and heavy. Days later, while cleaning, Rob noticed that a small trinket he kept on his desk, a silver compass gifted to him by his grandfather, had vanished. He searched high and low, but it was nowhere to be found. Just as frustration began to set in, he caught a glimpse of something shiny beneath the couch. As he reached for it, a spectral figure flickered at the edge of his vision. He froze, his breath hitching in his throat. When he turned, there was nothing but empty space, yet the air felt charged, alive with unspoken fears. Rob's nights became restless. Sleep eluded him, replaced by haunting dreams of shadowy figures and whispers that seemed to call his name. He awoke in a cold sweat, the oppressive weight of dread settling in the pit of his stomach. The once comforting walls of his home now felt like a cage. Rob found himself glancing over his shoulder, checking corners for lurking phantoms. The disquieting feeling that something was wrong festered within him. The townspeople, too, seemed to sense the shift in the air. Whispers of old tales resurfaced, stories of restless spirits and their unfinished business. Each passerby he encountered carried an expression of knowing, as if they understood the deeper currents that ran beneath Salem's surface. Rob decided to delve into Salem's dark history, seeking answers to the mounting unease that surrounded him. He began his research at the local library, a quaint building adorned with ivy that clung to the brick facade. Inside, the musty smell of old books enveloped him like a comforting blanket. Rows upon rows of shelves were filled with volumes chronicling the witch trials, the very events that had cast a long shadow over Salem. He pored over the accounts of the trials, each story more disturbing than the last. The tales of innocent lives ruined by paranoia and mass hysteria weighed heavily on his heart. Rob read about the young girls who had first cried witchcraft, their accusations leading to the hangings of many. The chilling narratives painted vivid pictures of desperation and despair. He could almost hear the echoes of the past loud cries, desperate pleas, and the haunting sound of a gavel striking wood in the courtroom. As he dug deeper, Rob discovered the eerie locations tied to these dark events. One such place was the old Burying Point Cemetery, a somber site where the graves of the accused lay. The stones were weathered and crumbling, the inscriptions faded and barely legible. A sense of foreboding enveloped him as he wandered through the narrow pathways lined with ancient tombstones. He felt as if the very ground beneath him was steeped in sorrow, the spirits of the past lingering just out of sight. He learned of the witch house, a creaky old structure that had once belonged to Judge Jonathan Corwin. The house stood as a testament to the trials, its dark wood and gabled roof casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and twist in the fading light. Rob visited the site, feeling an inexplicable pull. As he stepped inside, a chill swept through the air, and he could almost hear the whispers of those who had stood trial within its walls. As Rob prepared for the ritual, he felt a surge of fear and doubt. Would this act truly lift the curse, or would it only deepen his despair? The supernatural forces surrounding him seemed to sense his trepidation, growing bolder in their attempts to deter him. Despite the mounting pressure, Rob knew he had to confront the darkness that loomed over him. He felt the weight of history and the memories of those who had suffered. As he knelt on the cold ground, he closed his eyes and spoke the words he hoped would resonate through the veil between the living and the dead, the curse hanging heavy in the air. In that moment, Rob understood that the journey to break the curse was not just about him. It was about acknowledging the pain of the past, honoring those who had suffered, and seeking redemption for the wrongs that had been committed. As he poured his heart into the apology, he felt a shift in the atmosphere, a stirring of energy that sent chills down his spine. Rob took a deep breath, steeling himself for the battle ahead. The shadows coalesced into a figure, a spectral embodiment of Margaret, her visage twisted with anguish and fury. Her eyes burned with a fierce light, and the air around her crackled with energy. Rob could sense her pain, the weight of her suffering palpable. He felt the curse's grip tightening around him, urging him to flee, but he stood firm, rooted by determination.
"Why have you come?"
Her voice echoed, a haunting blend of sorrow and wrath.
"You seek to absolve yourself of my suffering, yet you carry the weight of your ancestors' sins."
Rob's throat tightened. He had come to apologize, to acknowledge the pain inflicted upon her, but the words caught in his chest. The shadows swirled around him, mocking and taunting, feeding off his fear. He could hear the voices of the damned, their cries piercing through the darkness, urging him to relent.
"No!"
He shouted, the desperation in his voice cutting through the cacophony.
"I am here to seek justice for you, for all who suffered. I will not let your pain remain unacknowledged."
With those words, the ground trembled, and the air grew colder. Margaret's form flickered as if caught between realms, her fury palpable.
"You cannot fight what has been set in motion. The curse is eternal. You are but a pawn in a game far older than you."
Rob clenched his fists, drawing strength from the very history he had immersed himself in. He could feel the spirits of the wronged gathering around him, their presence bolstering his resolve.
"I will not allow you to haunt this town any longer. I will break the curse, for you and for those who came before."
A whirlwind of energy erupted, the shadows swirling violently as the confrontation escalated. Rob stood his ground, channeling the voices of the past, their sorrow transforming into strength. He could feel the malevolent force pushing against him, each wave of energy threatening to engulf him.
Remember us,
the voices cried, their urgency a chorus that resonated deep within him.
Honor our stories.
He let the memories of the accused flow through him, their anguish, their tears, their desperate pleas for justice. Each recollection ignited a fire within, a fierce determination to honor their legacy. Rob unleashed the energy he had gathered, a brilliant light pushing back against the darkness. The shadows writhed, shrieking in protest as the truth illuminated the night.
You will not claim me,
he declared, his voice reverberating with the strength of those who had suffered. As the light surged, Margaret's form flickered, her features shifting from fury to something softer, a glimmer of hope breaking through her despair.
If you seek to end the curse, you must embrace the pain of the past, acknowledge it, and the chains will fall.
Rob's heart raced as he felt the weight of her words. He knelt before her, vulnerability washing over him.
I acknowledge your pain. I honor your sacrifice. I will ensure that your story is told, that you are remembered. I will not let your suffering be in vain.
In that moment of surrender, the shadows began to dissipate, the curse unraveling like a frayed thread. The air shifted, a palpable sense of release washing over the cemetery. Margaret's form shimmered, her eyes reflecting a profound sadness, but also gratitude.
You have taken the first step toward breaking the curse. Continue to honor us, and we shall find peace.
As the last remnants of darkness faded, Rob felt a surge of warmth envelop him, a sense of freedom that he had longed for. The cemetery, once a site of torment, transformed into a sanctuary of remembrance. The spirits of the past lingered, their whispers now a gentle breeze, guiding him toward healing. Rob rose to his feet, the weight of the curse lifted. He knew the battle was won, but the journey of remembrance and acknowledgement was just beginning. He would tell their stories, ensure that the spirits of Salem were never forgotten, and carry their legacy forward, forever entwined with the haunting history of the town. Rob stood amidst the gravestones, a sense of triumph washing over him. The air was still, the oppressive energy that had gripped the cemetery dissipating like mist in the morning sun. He felt a weight lift from his shoulders, a release from the fear that had haunted him for weeks. The shadows that once loomed large now seemed to retreat, their power diminished. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he could breathe freely. Rob stepped away from the burial ground. He was alive, a survivor of the trials both literal and metaphorical. With every step, he felt lighter, as though the chains that bound him had finally shattered. Days turned into weeks, and Rob endeavored to return to normal life. He resumed his routine at the bookstore, greeting customers with a newfound warmth. The dusty tomes on the shelves, once a source of dread, now felt like old friends, their pages filled with stories yearning to be shared. He dedicated himself to educating visitors about the history of Salem, the witch trials, and the lessons learned from the past. Rob attempted to reconnect with friends, sharing laughter over coffee at the local cafe, the cheerful banter offering a reprieve from the darkness. He felt lighter, more present. The burdens that had weighed him down seemed to lift, but beneath the surface, an unsettling undercurrent persisted. While tidying up his desk, Rob discovered a small, withered flower lying amidst the clutter. It was a dried marigold, a flower associated with protection against evil spirits. Confused, he picked it up, feeling a cold shiver travel down his spine. He had never seen it before, yet it seemed to pulse with a strange energy. He dismissed it as a mere coincidence, but deep down, doubt gnawed at him. One evening, he found himself wandering through the old Burying Point Cemetery, a place he thought he had left behind. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth, and the shadows loomed larger than life, wrapping around him like a dark cloak. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness, a fleeting glimpse of a woman in white. Rob's heart raced as he strained to see her face, but she melted into the shadows before he could comprehend her presence. The sensation of dread returned, stronger than before. Rob returned home, his mind racing with thoughts of Margaret and the curse that had haunted him. He had thought he could put the past behind him, but it seemed that the echoes of history were unwilling to let him go. It was as if the very fabric of Salem was woven with threads of sorrow and vengeance, and he was intricately tied to that legacy. In the stillness of the night, as he lay in bed, the whispers grew louder, a cacophony of restless souls who had once suffered.
Remember us.
They seemed to plead, their voices a haunting reminder that the stories of the past were not merely history. They were alive, breathing, and waiting to be acknowledged. Rob realized then that the curse had not been lifted, it had transformed. The spirits of Salem had merely shifted their focus, now seeking someone to carry their tales forward. The horror of Salem continued, a dark thread woven into the very essence of his existence, leaving him forever intertwined with the ghosts of the past.